Joining us for insight now on the U.S. capture of the designated illegitimate leader of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, is NTD Washington correspondent Luis Martinez. Good to have you with us today, Luis. Venezuelans have been protesting for freedom for 27 years. And I know, Luis, you've been watching and covering this event very closely. How are Venezuelans feeling right now?
Well, I think elated and happy and relieved are a few of the adjectives that can be used to describe how Venezuelans are feeling at home and abroad. In Venezuela, I talked to my own family who's still there and friends of ours that are still in Venezuela. Most of them are celebrating the end of the dictatorship. They're, of course, also waiting to see what's going to happen. There's an important context for our audience is that this isn't the first time that the dictatorship has left power in the past 27 years. Back in 2002, when Chavez was leading the Venezuelan regime, he was ousted for about 48 hours. And during that period, of course, a lot of people celebrated, but then he was reinstated into power. So I think Venezuelans back home are waiting to see what the next steps are, waiting to see what the now President Delcy Rodriguez will do. And if the removal of Maduro means a slow transition into democratic order, or it just means a reshuffling of the regime structure. Abroad, of course, I've also talked to exiled community. Everyone's very happy. There's a comment that must be said that no one is happy that their capital city is being bombed, or happy particularly that foreign military has to intervene, but they're definitely happy that a dictator that has caused terrible pain and harm to the country, and that over a third of the population had to leave because of his policies, has been now removed and today being arraigned in a court in New York.
Certainly, and developments seem to be happening very quickly at this time. Maduro was captured inside a heavily fortified military fortress. What did it take to capture him?
Of course, this is Fuerte Tiuna, which is the largest military fort in the capital city. Again, personal experience. I come from a military family in Venezuela, and family of officers would have access to this fort. So I spent many of my weekends, my childhood weekends, in this military fort. In the past few months, they actually nicknamed Maduro in circles in Venezuela the mayor of Fuerte Tiuna instead of the president of Venezuela, because he was holed up in this military fort with his loyalist forces around. We know now, also confirmed by the Cuban government, that 32 of the people that were killed during this audacious raid by the U.S. military were Cuban agents. That's the most inner circle of protection that was guarding Nicolás Maduro. And we also, of course, know that the U.S. military had to eliminate air defense systems on its path from the coast into Caracas to Fuerte Tiuna, retrieve Nicolás Maduro, that apparently was captured before being able to enter a fortified panic room, and then extracted with no loss of life on American troops. Only, I think, one helicopter received fire, but was able to fly back safely to its base. So also all the information that we have would suggest that there were internal collaborators, so people within Maduro's inner circle and within the Venezuelan armed forces that had contacts with the American military and intelligence to allow for this operation. We know that the Delta Force team that went in to retrieve Maduro had been training at a compound that was built as a perfect replica of the quote-unquote fortress where Maduro was hiding. So there was intelligence from inside Maduro's circle as to the schematics of where he was going to be, when he was going to be there, and how to enter and exit. And of course, it's worth mentioning that none of the air defense systems that Venezuela has, and they have Russian and Iranian S-300 air defense systems. They have over 5,000 handheld Igla-S Russian air defense missiles. None of them were active or used, which would suggest that either U.S. military and its electronic interference systems are incredibly advanced, and or that there were components of the Venezuelan armed forces that stood down those equipments in order for the raid to happen.
Important insights and considerations there. Looking now at Maduro's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize last month, yet she's not assuming the leadership. And President Trump, of course, was called out by her, and she appreciated him in her speech accepting the prize. What factors are at play here in the fact that she's not taking the stand now?
Well, first of all, Maria Corina Machado is the most prominent face of the Venezuelan opposition internationally. She won the Nobel Peace Prize, but she was not the one who ran for office in last year's presidential elections in Venezuela. It was her surrogate, Edmundo Gonzalez, because Maria Corina was actually barred by the Nicolás Maduro regime from being a candidate. So in any case, if someone would be able to take over power in Venezuela with some sort of legitimacy, it would be Edmundo Gonzalez, who was the official or the actual winner of those elections of last year, July 28th. Now, the proof of the vote count right now is secured in the vaults of the National Bank in Panama. But it's also important to understand that during a transition from an authoritarian regime into democracy, there's a lot of elements within the Venezuelan regime that would like to find assurances that they will not have the same fate that Nicolás Maduro. So I would believe that the Trump administration allowing for the Maduro regime's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, to assume power right now is to allow for a period of transition before either new elections are called or Edmundo Gonzalez, who won last year's elections, is put into place. Let's remember, it's over 27 years of regime control of all the security forces, of all the intelligence apparatus, of the national police and the armed forces, all people who have been making money through these narco-terrorist networks that were led by Nicolás Maduro, that are now wondering whether or not there's a place for them in a post-Maduro Venezuela. And that is going to be a very delicate balance to strike because, unfortunately, they are the ones who have the weapons. They are the ones who have the means of repression. And just changing who's atop of that structure doesn't mean that the entire structure is going to obey a new legitimate president.
Now, President Trump has said that the U.S. is in charge in Venezuela, at least right now. What does that look like? And if you could just parse that out for us.
Of course, I think a lot of people are being carried away by that headline and that, imperialist and anti-colonial sentiments being fed by that headline. There's precedent to this. And there's precedent to this in the region. If we look at Panama in 1989, when Manuel Noriega was deposed during Operation Just Cause, and a newly elected democratic government took over in Panama, pretty much every high-level government official, every minister, and even the president had a shadow figure within the United States government that would advise and would serve to consult and would help that new government have a path forward through democracy and through peaceful means to transition from a military authoritarian government to a peaceful civilian government. So I think that that's probably what's going to happen. And President Trump mentioned that there's going to be a team of his administration that will oversee the transition and that things are handled properly in Venezuela, which does not mean that it is the U.S. government that is now in control of the country, but that will help to advise, consult, and serve to guide any new and incoming administration into a civilian administration, a democratic civilian administration of the country.
Any more thoughts on this, Trump saying that there could be U.S. boots on the ground in Venezuela, perhaps as part of this transition?
Yes, I think it's messaging, right? So, like, if you are part of the Maduro regime and you just saw what happened, you might be thinking, well, okay, Maduro has been deposed. Maybe we can just reshuffle power amongst ourselves and continue the authoritarian control over Venezuela. But by knowing that the United States has 1/3 of its Navy still parked just 12 miles outside of your coast, and that they have the ability to strike as they did during Operation Absolute Resolve, will make them think twice on whether they want to continue an authoritarian control of the country or allow for this democratic transition. So I think it's messaging from the Trump administration to first say that they were ready for a second strike that wasn't necessary, and that they're ready also to put boots in the ground in case the transition doesn't go smoothly. I don't think that we will see that happening in the near future. There's a lot of signals that would show, and even from the president who just took power in Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, saying that they want to have good relations with the United States, good economic ties to the United States. So we will likely just see more rhetoric coming from both sides in order to appease the elements that need to be appeased for this to go smoothly and without further bloodshed.
Luis Martinez, thank you so much for your time today and your insights. Really appreciate it.